everyone, Marcello here from GameCube Galaxy. I am very much excited today to actually have the opportunity to speak with Chris Redfield himself, Joe Whyte.
Hello.
Joe, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody just a little bit about yourself?
Well, hello everybody. I'm honored to be here today with Marcello. We're very fortunate to have been hooked up with him through some mutual friends at the Greenville, South Carolina Southeast Gaming Expo. It was a couple weekends ago. Had a great time there. Matt, thank you again. And so yeah, I was the voice of Chris Redfield in 2002 for the remake. Had absolutely no idea that 22 years later I would be being asked to speak about the game and about my experience doing it, but here we are, and I'm more than happy to do it and honored to be asked. So just happy to be here today with you, Marcello.
Wesker? Jill? Where did they go?
This is very surreal for me because this is a game I very much grew up with when it released in 2002. This remake is the king of remakes. I feel like this is a game that when it came out, it blew the minds of everybody seeing the PlayStation 1 original. And then 6 years later, here we go, where it's this complete revamp, visually, artistically, storytelling wise. When you look at the cheesy voice acting of the first one, because they were still trying to kind of find their ground, but then you look at how they just revamped it with this remake and you brought Chris Redfield to life.
Thank you.
And personifying him.
Well, it was a paradigm shift in video gaming. I hear that a lot, that people consider Resident Evil the remake to be one of, if not the best remake of a game ever done, because it took us from that previous look of video gamedom to the beginning of the evolution into modern AAA games and the look to extrapolate 20 years later, we've got something that looks like Village or any of the newer games that are coming out these days, and getting into the Unreal Engine 5 look and just that extreme reality that we're getting. Even if it's an art directed reality, I mean, it's still just looks absolutely real. And I think that the remake was one of the first, but I can't think of any other game that went from the extreme of the way Resident Evil 1 looked to the way Remake looks. And
Correct.
How that sort of jump-started, those pre-rendered backgrounds kind of jump-started that change into the way modern video games look. And I think that we were right there at the right time. And Capcom certainly nailed it. With the release of that game. I mean, some people don't like the tank controls, that's fine, not a big deal. But just the style of the game, the remastered dialogue, I mean, the dialogue in our game is there's still a cheese factor involved. And I don't fault the voice actors in the first game. The first game kind of gets a bad rap for what the voiceover sounded like. And I think it was just a combination of people who were directed to act that way. And it was still kind of hearkening back to the old style of video game dialogue. There was a certain cheese factor to how people did voiceover for video games. They hadn't gotten to that point where we were doing things more realistic. Again, I think our game took another step closer into the reality of more naturalistic voiceover games. Voiceover for games. And so we were just in the right place at the right time. Capcom did all the right stuff with that game, and I was just lucky to be there. I mean, I don't know if you know the story of how I got the part, but
no, that's actually one of my questions, and actually several fans have already asked me, because I've asked them, just shoot me a few questions. If I'll see if I can ask a few of these. A lot of them have actually been, how did you end up falling into that role? We're all fascinated about that.
Well, that's a good way to put it, because I didn't set out with an intention to become Chris Redfield or to get a part in this game. I had just started doing voiceover. I had been working at Disney Animation for a number of years, and I was doing voiceover there, what they call scratch dialogue. which is throwaway dialogue that they use to test the film. So if they're working on a film at Disney or any of the major animation companies, they will do storyboards for the project. And then to those storyboard drawings, they will put dialogue. They'll have actors, actresses come from around the building and just go down to the recording studio and record the lines as though they were doing them in the film, trying to make them sound as close as possible to whatever the character is going to be. The production team will take that dialogue, put it together with the storyboard pictures with some temp music and some temp sound effects, and that's how they work out sequences. It's all temporary, it's all going to get thrown away, but after they figure out how the sequence is going to work, then what they'll do is have the regular actors who are, paid to do the voiceover part, they'll come in and re-record the dialogue so that they can then put that in and make the actual film around that. They'll take that recorded dialogue and give that to the animators, and that's what they'll do the lip sync on the characters to and the animation to and whatnot. Or they'll use the mocap data from the actor. If the actor has done mocap for the part, they'll use that dialogue to match up with that animation. So I had been doing scratch dialogue for a number of Disney, probably 10 different movies at Disney Animation. So that's a lot of good practice. I had really been kind of, thinking maybe it might be a possible career path doing voiceover. Anyway, my wife was working at Sound Deluxe. Sound Deluxe was a company in Hollywood. It's no longer there. That was the recording studio where they were doing all the sound design and the voiceover recording for all the actors was being done at Sound Deluxe. My wife was the office manager there, and we had a number of friends, and because she had been there for a while, and we were friends with the engineers and the casting people there. And so I went to have lunch with my wife one day. And the casting person, Carol Rougier, was there, and she said, "Hey, Joe, we're casting this video game. I know you're doing some voiceover stuff now. Do you want to jump in the booth and see if you can voice match? We're trying to voice match this character from the original game to see if we can get the same kind of sound in the new game." But the guy who had done Ramsey Scott McCullough, who was the original actor for Chris Redfield, passed away in 2000. He cancer apparently. He died in 2000, so they couldn't use him, obviously. So I said, "Sure, yeah, I'd love to. What's the video game?" She said, "Oh, it's something called Resident Evil," and I was like, "Oh, okay." I didn't know it. I had no idea that Resident Evil was a thing, and I wasn't a gamer until I did that game. When my game came out, I bought a GameCube and I bought the game and I became addicted, and now it's all my money goes into video games and consoles.
That's awesome.
So I jumped in the booth and I did this audition and I tried to match the original voice, and they really liked it. They said, "Yeah, you sound really, you have the same vocal qualities as the original actor. Would you like to do this part?" And I said, "Of course, yeah, that'd be great." And I did I think we did a total of 4 days of recording.
Okay.
A few hundred however many lines Chris has throughout the game. We did that, and I forgot about it. And it was like a year and a half after I did the voiceover that the game came out. It was a long time between doing the voice and seeing the game. And then I bought the game and played it, and I was like, "Oh, this is great." And still had no idea that it was going to become the juggernaut that it was going to become. I fell into this without any intention of doing it, just in the right place at the right time, and had a great time doing it. Being in the booth for Chris Redfield was a lot of fun. I mean, he's an action hero, so it's not very often that you get to do all the action hero-y sounds and all that. I think my favorite sequence to record was, I think, Plant 42. When it grabs him and throws him around the room. And so doing all those hit sounds was a lot of fun. I had a little taste of the interview process shortly after the game came out. A friend of mine named Ted Boyke, we were working at Disney together, and he did a little interview for a New Zealand video game newsletter. It was kind of trying to be a magazine, but it was only like 4 pages long,
Okay.
called Press Play. And I don't think they're still doing stuff, but it was from New Zealand, and he interviewed me for Press Play. And I have that interview here somewhere. I have the actual copy of it, and I'm still friends with Ted. In fact, I saw Ted at he was in Pasadena a couple weekends ago. We did a thing in Pasadena, the Southern California Gaming Expo, and I ran into Ted. I hadn't seen him in many years, but there he was. He actually sells video games and stuff outside, and so it was good to see Ted again. But,
nice little like nostalgia reunion.
Brought the whole thing full circle. You were the first guy to interview me. Now I'm here doing autographs and stuff, and so that was pretty trippy.
So Joe, you said that initially when you got this role, you weren't as well aware of the impact Resident Evil had. So Resident Evil 1 changed the gaming landscape by being the birth of survival horror.
Right.
And then Resident Evil 2 just elevated upon that. And Resident Evil 3 became a little bit more of an action-y direction. And then the franchise at that point was very much cemented. By the third game, it was far more cemented. It was these fans, they learned to just love these characters. Chris, Leon, Jill, Claire. Yep. Upon finding yourself voicing Chris, that later on you started realizing like, oh, wait a minute, this is a lot bigger than I think I ever anticipated. And then you saw the success of this remake. How's that been for you to feel like where you actually go around going like, and I don't mean this like in an ego way, but more of like oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was voicing someone so beloved in this game.
I'm extremely humbled by it. And I wish that Capcom had been willing to bring me back to reprise the role. I'm sad that hasn't happened. I love what Jeff Shine is doing with Chris Redfield these days. I think he's top-notch voice actor, and I feel like if I were to cast a new game that featured Chris Redfield in it, I would probably cast Jeff Shine to do it. Everybody else, I mean, Roger Craig Smith, the other voice actors who've done them have all done a great job with them. And so I kind of feel like a proud grandfather, and that the role that I was fortunate enough to initiate, well, I didn't initiate it, Ramsey Scott McCulloch did. It's kind of weird because he was the first Chris Redfield. I'm the second Chris Redfield, but people look at Remake as a new game. A lot of people have come up to me and said, you're the original Chris Redfield. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not. But for the new era, for the new paradigm, I am the Chris Redfield that kind of took that. I don't know how to exactly say what I'm trying to say right now. I have to stop dropping acid before I do these things. It's really makes my mind go, I'm kidding.
It's all those green herbs.
Right, exactly. Green herbs. When you mix them with the red, it really kicks in. I've got to tell you. No, I'm kidding.
And then you get the red, the green, red, and blue, and it's a whole nother world.
You're in space, baby. So the thing about it being a legacy and all that, it really is extremely humbling. And one of the most humbling things about it is that it was not something that I went after. It's something that was given to me. It was really such a moment of kismet that I was allowed to do this part. I just feel extremely lucky to have been in the right place at the right time.
Well, I think I speak for behalf of many of the fans to just say thank you for doing the voice work you did for Chris and bringing him to life in a way that was just memorable. You said that once the game came out, you picked up a GameCube, you picked up the game. This was your first time kind of just diving into the world of survival horror in a sense, and just the GameCube world and all that. Kind of explain, do you remember what it was like, the feeling of playing something that was so unlike anything you've seen before?
Well, playing it was a revelation because like I said, I really wasn't that into video games prior to having done the game. I wasn't opposed to them. I just hadn't really fallen into that world, and the doing of the voiceover for the part was kind of standard. It wasn't doing the voiceover that kind of brought me into the world. It was seeing it. It was playing the game. And like I said, after I played it, I absolutely fell in love with it, got consumed with it, and then had to go out and buy all the other games and play the, and started buying consoles. The whole rabbit hole that anyone can fall into when they first start to love not just video games, but any hobby. It's like, I gotta have this, I gotta have that. When I went out and bought the game, I bought the GameCube and the game, and I started to play it. But because I wasn't a gamer, I wasn't that good, and it was very frustrating. I was like, I can't beat this. God damn, So I went out and bought something called a Game Shark. Are you familiar with the Game Shark?
Oh, yes.
Which allowed me to cheat on a grand level, And I just loved the hell out of that. That was so much fun. Being able to complete the game with the infinite, the bazooka, and just that opened up a whole new world of possibilities to me.
That's when the real fun starts.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But I have to admit that it started me down a path of really appreciating what goes into making these games. I'm also a screenwriter. I've never had anything sold, but it's looking at how video games are written as opposed to how a screenplay is written. I really have a lot of respect for the people who put these games together and figure out interactive dialogue that can actually work and also move a story forward in a non-linear way. I think of video games as being kind of dialogue in parallel as opposed to dialogue in a serial fashion, because everything has to happen in a sequence. You have to solve certain puzzles before you can solve other puzzles. So the dialogue has to work to kind of guide you to this area of the game where you accomplish something. But the dialogue also has to work non-tangentially with what is to come. And so you can't have some dialogue occur too early, because I don't even understand it, because I've never written a video game. I'm not sure exactly how you do that.
But it makes sense, like you said, because the difference with something like screenwriting a film or a TV show, where it is just, it goes at whatever pace you go at. A game, it's like, okay, well, the script has to go along with the gameplay itself. So it's not just the cinematics, but it's the gameplay. And then if there's certain dialogue stated within the gameplay, it has to go sequentially with what's happening in the story.
Yes.
And it has to go within a certain order.
Relationships, you have to support and grow relationships in kind of a non-linear way. And to do that successfully, which I feel Capcom has been very good at, and also Konami, with Silent Hill. I think the Silent Hill is so very good. Dead by Daylight, things like Alan Wake, all do such a great job with the dialogue. I still to this day, I haven't researched it or tried to do it myself. I wish I should try to make a video game. I have I have everything I need. I'm a modeler. Oh, that's the other thing. The other half of my life, when I was working at Disney, I was a 3D modeler.
Oh, wow.
So if you've seen any films from Tarzan to Tangled, you've seen.
So you go behind your history on that. Actually, let's definitely touch base on that.
Did you see Treasure Planet?
What's funny? I was just scrolling through some of the Disney films, and I'm like, this is one film I never saw, but I've heard is like a hidden gem. It's like one that never became like this huge thing, but those who watched it said it's actually good. I need to watch that one. So okay, so you worked on that.
A lot of the models, the 3D models in that, I made. The big ship that they fly through space on. That's mostly my model. There was a little bit of work done on it by a guy named Greg Martin, who's a good friend of mine, like my brother actually. I love the guy. Who's just a really great modeler. He did a couple of small parts on the ship, but for the most part, it's my model. If you saw Tangled, the big castle that the family lives in, that's my model.
My daughter loves that movie.
Yeah,
absolutely loves that movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyway, you've seen a lot of my work, a lot of the so that's the other side of my life, is that I've worked in animation for almost 30 years now.
Wow.
As a modeler, and it's actually helping me do things like I'm making. I 3D modeled This is the survival knife that Chris
Oh
used.
yeah.
So I don't know why the camera's making it fade away, but
You
this
see the grooves on top.
yeah, absolutely. The detail is insane. I modeled this myself in a program called Maya, and then
Yeah.
printed it on my 3D printer right there. So this is actually made of resin. It's flexible. But I'm doing products now for Resident Evil for the Crimson Head Elder podcast, and we sell these online and have a little Etsy store, and I'm doing all kinds of Resident Evil thingies. Chris Redfield, I don't know how to make him stand out more, but this is a
Oh yeah, his iconic running pose.
Chris Redfield running pose 3D model.
That's awesome.
Hand paint those. But yeah, it is rather a rabbit hole. 3D printing has taken over my life pretty much. But suffice it to say that all my years of being a 3D modeler have really come to sort of pay off. Now I'm able to do some 3D printing of my models and make a little extra money selling those on the side. I have to show you something. This is one of my favorite items that I'm making now. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. This is...
Are they like those knife earrings?
Earrings. They're survival knife. They are the Chris Redfield survival knife made into earrings. And I wish I could show you the detail because there's blood on the blade.
Yeah, I can see the blood a little bit on there. I can see the grooves a little bit.
They're hand painted, and they came out so good. And
that's awesome.
So I brought these to Greenville a couple weeks ago, and sold all but 3 sets. People really liked them.
That's awesome.
So that's some of the stuff that I'm doing with the 3D printing now.
That's really cool, Joe. That's good stuff right there. Talk about, again, taking something that you happen to just fall into and then not realize the impact. Clearly, it's been an impact for you.
Oh yeah.
Seeing how important it is, because now you stated that you have a podcast that you're part of called the Crimson Head podcast, correct?
Yes, the Crimson Head Elder podcast. Look up crimsonhead.com, CRIMSON-head.com. That will get you to our website. And we have been doing this. Actually, I became aware that the whole Chris Redfield Resident Evil thing, as popular as it was, through a gentleman in London named Paul Freshwater, who started the Crimson Head Elder podcast. He called, I think it was 2014, I want to say, or 2013 or 2014. I was working at Disney Publishing, and I got a random phone call from Paul, calling from England, asking if I would be interested in being interviewed on his podcast. And I said, sure, it'd be great. And it wasn't until that interview with Paul that I really realized there's a fan base out there for Resident Evil. We started doing some podcasts and had a lot of people come on, a lot of guests, and a lot of the voice actors from the game, which has, talk about snowball effect. The interviews that we did on Crimson Head Elder podcast have turned into friendships that I have now with the other actors from the game. I had never met them before. I had never spoken to them. I didn't, they were just names on the back of the thing. But now we're all friends, and we travel around together to get as a cast. Myself, wow. Heidi Anderson-Swan, who played Jill.
Yep.
Peter Jessup, who played Wesker, and Hope Levy, who played Rebecca. We are all kind of the part of this little crew that's going around to conventions as a group. The guy who played Barry, his name is Ed Smarin, and we had him on to interview him. He's a great guy. I'm going to try to get him to do some of these appearances with us so we can have all 5 cast members from the game appear. But that's, just opened up a whole new world of possibilities. That one phone call from Paul from London saying, "Hey, Joe," this is my impersonation of Paul Freshwater, and I love Paul. Don't get me wrong. Joe, this is Paul calling from England. I've got a little podcast, and I would love to have you come on and talk about your experiences as Chris Redfield. That's my Paul Freshwater impersonation. Anyway, changed my life, made me aware of the Resident Evil community, and I've just been a part of that ever since, and I love it. I feel a sense of responsibility to this community, to kind of make myself available to them. So many people are interested in the genesis of the video game industry, not just my game, but the beginnings of that whole era of video games. Very interesting to a lot of people. I had no idea that there's this supportive community out there. And the thing that means the most to me is when, if I'm at a convention or something and signing autographs and someone comes up and says, you have no idea how much your video game and your voiceover for that game meant to me. Chris Redfield was absolutely, I was so depressed, and the only thing that would help me was playing this game. I just get stories like that all the time, what this game means to people. Truly humbling. Just the love that's out there for the entire franchise, not just my game, but is phenomenal.
Without question.
I don't know how much more I can say that I'm humbled by it, but I just feel like, I think gratitude is the word. Gratitude is what I feel for being allowed to kind of hang out with all these cool people.
And there's a genuine nature to that, right? Like I could definitely see that from you right away, that this is just something that the role meant a lot to you, but in a way where when you saw the impact it had on others, like you said before, you didn't realize how big Resident Evil was.
No idea.
How big it's gotten. 22 years later, this game is still a cultural impact, at least the remake. When you have this passion behind something too, and you start taking it as your own, in a sense, that type of positive feedback, that type of relatability that people have, is beyond humbling, I'm sure, without question.
It really is. It really is. And it feels good to know that some little creative endeavor that I made 22 years ago still resonates, and that people are still enjoying it. That means the world to me. And I can't thank the community enough, and people like yourself, Marcello. It's such an honor to be asked to come in and talk about those times in the games.
Listen, like I said earlier, it's already an honor to have you here and have a chance to talk to you, because 22 years ago when I played this game, I would have never ever guessed I'd be talking to the person who portrayed Chris Redfield in this remake.
Isn't that crazy?
It really is. And life is interesting, that's for sure. Like you never know where you land. Much like yourself, you didn't realize that one day you would just land in this role. You just came out of nowhere, and it just the right place, right time.
Absolutely.
Now, Joe, let me ask, during development for this game, or even post-development, did you ever get a chance to meet Shinji Mikami, the director and creator of Resident Evil?
My recollection is that, yes, I did. I believe he directed at least one, if not all, of the voiceover sessions.
Okay.
I don't have hard copy confirmation of that, but that's my recollection of the event, is that I was in the booth, and that there were, I think, 3 guys from Japan in the engineer booth, and Carol, and the casting person. She was also in there, and she kind of acted as the go-between between the directors and myself in the booth, because they didn't speak much English, so they would kind of give her notes, and she would try to get me to do, what they were trying to get her to tell me to do. It was kind of a little bit of a mishmash, but it worked. But I'm pretty sure that one of them was Shinji. I think he may only have been there for 1 or 2 of the days, and we did 4 days of recording, and then 1 extra day, a 5th day of impact sounds and hits and falls and things like that, and screaming and whatever, shark, whatever had to be yelled, Richard. Oh, I was also the voice of Richard,
I was about to say, actually, I was going to add in saying there was one more character you voiced, I believe.
Yes. And it's so funny that I always forget that I did that character. He doesn't have a whole lot of lines.
Right.
And they said, we need this other character, and we don't want to get another actor, and can you just change your voice a little bit and do this other character? So I describe Richard as being Chris with a hernia. He just he's just Chris, but he's always like this, so always got this pain in the side. oh, there's a big snake in there. I need serum. That's Richard.
That's awesome.
He's the redheaded stepchild of the Resident Evil cast. And I don't mean to do disparage redheaded stepchildren, but
no.
we know the old story.
Yeah. That's funny though that you guys have to figure out, like, okay, like we're just gonna go with the similar voice. We're just gonna sound like I'm in a little bit more pain.
Yeah. And it was a kind of an eye-opening experience that they would just have the same actor do multiple voices. And I actually was able to experience that in a really big way. A couple of years later, I did a bunch of voiceover for EverQuest 2.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever played EverQuest.
That's a throwback title right there.
Yeah. And I did over 40 different characters in that game.
Wow.
I mean, I'm everything from vampire bats to zombies to city guards. I mean, my voice is all through that game. And everybody in town worked on EverQuest. I mean, it was like there's probably 300 different voice actors.
Wow.
In that game. It's an exercise in improvisation, because they'll say, okay, now this one's a toxic dwarf who also sells fruit in town. Okay, so what are you going to do for that? I don't know. I'm a toxic dwarf selling fruit. I don't know what my voice, I also did the voice of Mr. Krabs for 3 of the SpongeBob video games.
So I came across that in your IMDb, and I'm like, wow. Like I noticed again, you were working for Disney. There was a few credits there for that, and then Mr. Krabs for some of the SpongeBob games. Like, oh, okay, like that's Chris Redfield, Mr. Krabs. I can see the relation.
Isn't that weird? Another one, that one actually I got through an audition.
Okay.
I actually auditioned it for that and got it. And they brought me back for 3 of the games. There's a lot of controversy. If you go to YouTube and look up Joe Whyte, Mr. Krabs, I take a lot of pretty heavy flack for the quality of my Mr. Krabs.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I'll have to look it up to just get an idea of to what extent.
It's kind of funny.
Ahoy there, SpongeBob! As a faithful crew member of the Krusty Krab, you've been, promoted to head shiny object collector.
But I enjoy it. I did what I did, and I have so much respect for Clancy Brown. He's one of my heroes. I did the best that I could, and like I said, they brought me back 3 times for 3 different games. So if you have an issue with my voice as Mr. Krabs, then talk to THQ, because that's who made the games. And I enjoyed doing it. It was really hard, because I was really trying to do a good Clancy Brown impersonation. He's just such an iconic voice, and his voice is naturally so much lower than mine is. I'm a high tenor. I'm used to singing the Irish lullabies, and here I'm being asked to do this voice down here like this. I also got to one of my favorite voiceover gigs was doing Gimli in one of the Lord of the Rings games. So
really,
4 days of 4 days of talking like this, and just talking like a pirate for 4 days. I couldn't talk for 4 days afterwards.
Were you coming home to your family speaking that way still?
Talking right. Hello, dinner's not ready yet. I gotta stop doing that. I'm gonna blow my voice.
Yeah, I don't want you to hurt your vocal cords.
No.
Back on Resident Evil for a moment, if you don't mind. So, Resident Evil 1, king of remakes in many ways. It was, it pioneered. You stated it earlier, and that is true. At that time, there were no remakes. Resident Evil Remake was one of the first, if not the first of its kind, for us to be like, holy cow, this is what we could do, remaking something.
Right.
Granted, nowadays we're in an era where everything's getting remade because of just whatever the case may be.
It's a whole new world has opened up to us with these game engines like RE Engine and Unreal Engine 5, and I mean that to me, the development of these new game engines is the next quantum leap forward. You know, because they really are taking advantage of new chip designs, especially in terms of graphic chips.
Mhm.
They're just able to do so much more these days than they could back then. I mean, for Resident Evil Remake, they had to pre-render all the backgrounds because they couldn't render all of that stuff in real time. There just wasn't the processing power.
Right.
Now there is, and now these new game engines are, I mean, you've got real-time particles, real-time water. You know, these are things that are immensely expensive in terms of processing power, and it just wasn't there before. But now it is, and we're going to see, I think certainly within the next 3 to 5 years, that gray area between cinematic reality and video game reality is going to disappear. You're going to
that line's going to be blurred. It's
blurred or eradicated entirely. We will actually, you know, like nowadays with metahumans and with was it Replica? I think is another sort of metahumans type thing where we're getting these pre-made digital humans that you can adjust. You can do all these, you know, different tweaks and changes to the face and the body size and all that, and the clothing. We're getting real-time fabric that is moving like real fabric, real-time environmental things like wind and snow and rain that are all interactive. I mean, that's the most amazing thing. You've got a character now walking through a stream, and it's actually physically moving the water, or, you know, the character's kicking. The processing power, it has allowed us to enter this new era of reality in our video games.
So with Capcom, with their RE engine, I have extra respect for them because a lot of studios nowadays, because of the cost of development within gaming right now being astronomical, it is time consuming and it's extremely expensive to create their own engines. Now, Capcom clearly said, hey, we're going to create this RE engine, which felt like that next big leap for Resident Evil. Like when I look back at the Resident Evil 1 for the PS1 to the remake, as I feel like the RE engine was that next big leap coming from the PlayStation 3 360 era of Resident Evil games. And I look at something like, I remember Resident Evil 2 remake was when that was revealed. Like, wow, okay, like I know Resident Evil 7 came out prior to that with the RE engine, but Resident Evil 2 remake really stood out. When like, okay, now we're getting back to Resident Evil 1 remake in terms of that dynamic, moody lighting, but ultra rich detail. And then we saw it with the Resident Evil 4 remake, which I think they did a fantastic job remaking that as well.
Have you played it in VR?
I have been wanting to get a PlayStation VR 2 just to experience that remake in VR.
It is, pardon my French, your pants good.
Then I need to get this VR for that. Now, and that's the thing. Resident Evil 4 is actually, to be very honest, that is actually my favorite game of all time.
It is mine too. Yeah, I was going to say that, you know, 4 is my game of choice. Although I really like Village. I think Village is a very close second, if not a tie for first.
Village is good. That did surprise me. I really enjoyed Village more than I expected. Just because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this whole first-person view. Resident Evil 7 threw me off because I'm like, I like seeing the character for Resident Evil. Like, I like associating with that character. Resident Evil Village, though, I remember a lot of people saying, oh, it's like Resident Evil 4 in first person. I'm like, really? I'm like, all right, you might have, when you start bringing Resident Evil 4 comparisons in, you've got me hooked. And I thought that Village had some really horrifying set pieces. Well, one specific horrifying set piece and disturbing set piece, which was the baby.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That was the one scene I remember thinking this. I was like, I will never play this in VR for this scene alone. Like, I won't do it.
It's so scary. It's so scary.
It is terrifying.
Oh man.
Kind of going back on something you said about screenwriting and sequence, right? You look at how that story is told, but then, you know, Nick Apostolitis taking on the role of Leon, and like his dialogue was very natural within the gameplay with what's going on.
Yeah. Nick is fantastic.
He killed it as Leon. Back in Resident Evil 2 remake, I'm like, they got someone who's perfect for the role, and you could tell he's very passionate about that role. And
Yeah.
furthermore, in 4, you could tell he was like very gung-ho about like, yes, like this is it, this is the one. But it was thinking about the fact of just what you said earlier about like, okay, you know, game storytelling is very different from TV and film and writing a screenplay. Well, it has to work with what's happening in the gameplay too, and what's said in the gameplay outside of the cutscenes. It has to all match.
Right. And the timing has to be right.
Correct.
Because it has to work with where you are in the game. And if you go back, you know, games, that's one of the things I love is, I love open world style games where you can revisit an area that you've already been through and then go back to another area, and it's all kind of like the world is still happening. It's
Right.
like when you leave an area, it doesn't disappear and go off, and it's still there. You know, the zombies that you killed are still in that. They're still laying on the ground. If you go back there, they're going to be there. You know, I love that.
So I know we just touched base that what your potential favorite Resident Evil title is. And you're saying either 4, maybe Village, you know,
yeah,
maybe Remake, who knows? But what would you
Remake,
say was
yeah, Remake that's my favorite game of all time. But, you know, I have a certain personal attachment to that game.
and naturally and rightfully so. Now, Joe, let me ask, what would you say was I'm not gonna say like worst or bad, but rather what was like the Resident Evil you felt was your least favorite, or the one that you felt just didn't give you the same feelings that you got out of some of your favorites?
You know, I didn't vibe that much with 5 or 6.
Okay, I'll definitely agree with you on 6. That's,
you know, it just
that was the weakest.
Doesn't feel like the same world at all. And I definitely don't agree with you know, super steroid Chris Redfield with the
Roid Rage Chris.
Roid Rage Chris, right? punching the boulder and all that. That just my concept.
I try not to laugh. Every time I think about the boulder punch, I can't help but laugh. And I'm like, I don't get it.
You know, yeah, they tried to go someplace. They tried to go too superhero-y with it, you know, and Chris, I've said this before in other interviews, and my concept of what survival horror as a genre is all about is survival. I know that sounds simplistic and obvious, but who's more likely to survive in a mansion full of zombies? A normal guy, I mean, me, you know, like Joe Whyte walking into a house full of zombies, or super steroid Chris, who's, you know, half superhero, half, you know, he's, let's go, I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to, you know, it's, that's not scary to me. Seeing a superhero go through a scary situation doesn't do anything for me. I want to see an average guy. I want to see someone completely ill-equipped to handle that kind of terror and danger, be put into that situation, because there's nothing interesting about seeing a superhero do that, because they're going to win. You know, they're going to win.
What's interesting too is like when I look at Resident Evil 5, I mean, obviously the jokes were there when Chris was first revealed and he was like just jacked. So like everybody's like, holy cow, like what happened from Code Veronica to this? By the time 6 came around, I remember I was like, I don't know where they went with these characters, the story. It was in shambles. You know, I remember Resident Evil 6 starting off, like I was excited. I'm like, okay, cool, they brought Leon back. And then the first 5 minutes, I'm running on a highway with cars blowing up behind me. I'm like, man, this is like Michael Bay made it. And I got nothing against Michael Bay, but this is not Resident Evil to me.
Right.
And
yeah,
then
they lost their way. You know, hopefully and they pulled it back with 7.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a left turn in terms of the cast, and then continuing with Ethan. I don't know what the story of 9 is yet. I've been hearing rumors.
Yeah, I've been seeing those rumors also.
Is there, and I've heard that it might be another Chris-centric game?
So I'm hearing it would be, the rumors I've heard is that it will have almost all of the main characters in.
Really? Wow.
But Leon might be a big focus again. But
okay.
the rumors are that it takes place many years later. Like Leon's almost 50 years old at this point.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So the character's going to be older, but the rumors I've heard are potentially an open world Resident Evil, which I'm like, I'm curious how that would work, if it would work. I'm weary about that. Because like you said, survival horror has to be, there's got to be, you have to feel this confinement and lack of resources. And whereas like if it's open, well, you can easily utilize the environment in any way to get away from a scenario.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're really going that route. That was a rumor, but, and again, all of this is with a grain of salt.
Sure.
But the one thing I heard was that it would be a lot of the main characters, and it's supposed to wrap up all of their stories. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, like this might be the last one that they'll focus on Leon, Chris, Jill, like the main original cast, if they're going to go that route. And I would like to see that kind of just that finite story. I guess that just seeing all the resolve, whether the characters end up making it out in the end, or if some end up like in some ways, if like it is the last one with them, I'm like, anybody's kind of expendable at this point if they really want to go that route. And kind of keep you on your toes with who lives, who dies, like what's the weight of the threat or the horror that's behind it.
Sure. Right. Wow. Yeah, that sounds amazing. And I wonder, I'm in order to wrap up this story, it seems to me that the you'd have to have some kind of final destruction of Umbrella. They are the antagonist of all of the Resident Evil stories. In some way, it all comes back to their creations.
Correct.
And so, is there a way to actually destroy a worldwide amalgamated mega corporation like Umbrella, who makes everything from Frosted Flakes to zombie Nemesis style monsters? That to me seems to be the only way to consolidate the end of the story. Would have to be an end to that, and I don't know that that's entirely possible.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. Again, a lot of it's all speculation. A lot of it's taken with a grain of salt.
Right.
In some ways, for many, Resident Evil 5 was kind of the end of the whole Umbrella saga because it was Chris versus Wesker in the end. Wesker was the face of Umbrella in some ways. And like even Resident Evil 4, it starts off with talking about the fall of Umbrella after everything that happened in Resident Evil 3. But then in the end, in some capacity, you start finding out that, well, nope, the Umbrella's still involved in some way here so there's always this connecting element. And even Village, I was very surprised, but I mean, this is spoiler territory, so this may or may not make the cut in the final interview.
If you haven't played Village, plug your ears now.
Yes. Then you know where I'm going with this. But by the end, there was a lot more continuity than I anticipated to see. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like by the time you're playing as Chris in the end, it's like, oh no, there's a lot of connecting dots over here that I would have never guessed. And I actually liked that they went that direction.
Right.
So that was actually probably one of my more memorable moments of Village, was seeing that, okay, like we are still connecting all this, even though it's not. Some people say it's a mainline installment, some don't. Those plot points did connect where I'm like, okay, no, this counts. This is canon.
Yeah, right, right.
So, but yeah, so Resident Evil 9, who knows? I mean, I know you said Jeff Shine is the voice of Chris, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if he weren't to return for any reason, if Chris is in there, I mean, it'd be great to just kind of have you go back in, one more time, right?
Oh, I would do that in a heartbeat. I would love to play Chris again. That would be fantastic.
Now, there was rumor that they were going to remake the Resident Evil remake. They were going to do it a second time with the new RE engine.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that. Because I feel like the first remake is already perfect. Like, I feel like you have to kind of keep it in that vein, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it would be an effort to bring the original feel and story and mansion and that environment, you know, to give it that spectacular visuals, that really, you know, Remake kind of redefined visuals, graphics from the old school of video games, and Village redefines graphics for the new school of video games.
Right.
So it would just be an effort to bring that game that broke so many paradigms back in 2002, to bring that game into the new look, the new graphic success of the RE engine. So in that, I could see it being done, and I wouldn't mind seeing that, because I would love to experience the mansion in that quality of graphics.
I can only imagine what they would do with that mansion.
Oh, it would be gorgeous. Just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, with real-time mist and fog, and you know, just the water. I mean, going into the aquadrome where the shark is and all that stuff would just be gorgeous with real-time water.
Gorgeous and more terrifying at the same time, just because of how much more realistic it will look.
Yeah. So, I hope they do it. You know, and I would be ecstatic and honored to be asked to revoice Chris for that game. I would also be happy if they just reused the voices that we did in 2002 for that game. I would just love to be a part of it. If they wanted to go with a younger actor, and I would certainly understand that. I mean, I just turned 63. I'm way too old to play Chris now. Chris is supposed to be something like in my game. Chris is supposed to be, I think, 26.
I mean, your voice still sounds like him. Like, I'm here, like, just as I'm talking to you, I'm like, all right, like, if someone closes their eyes, like, yeah, no, that's Chris. Like, you hear it in your voice.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think like you're.
I don't talk like this now. You know, oh, my pancreas just fell out, and I gotta pick it up.
We went from intelligent Chris to void rage Chris to my pancreas fell out Chris.
Oh dear, I think I pooped.
That'll be Resident Evil 19.
Yeah, right. Where are my teeth, by the way? I think I left them.
You're gonna need an item slot open in your inventory to find the teeth to equip it.
Put them back in my head.
That'll be a puzzle in and of itself.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Joe, so some of the fans of the channel have reached out to me. I actually did a community post on my YouTube page early this morning, just letting them know that you were graciously taking the time out of your day to jump in on this interview. And if they had any questions, I would love to pitch a few of them to you if they weren't already questions that were answered. So the first question I have is from a fan that goes by R17. And one of his questions was, where did the recordings take place? And what was the atmosphere like during those sessions? Now, I know you stated that they were taking place at Sound Deluxe, correct?
Yes. So it was all one word, SOUNDELUX was the name of the company. They also, Sound Deluxe at the time was also a microphone making manufacturing company. Some of the best microphones that money can buy. In fact, I have one of them here.
Okay.
And they became Bach Audio.
Oh yeah! Oh wow! Okay, I didn't realize that was the same company. Okay, yeah, I'm very well aware of Sound Deluxe. Oh, wow.
Fantastic microphones. It was weird because there was no sense of the potential size of the franchise of Resident Evil at the time. It was just another little video game that was being done, and there wasn't a lot of, at least if you weren't already in the Resident Evil community, there wasn't a lot of advertisement for it. It was just another video game, you know. So the attitude at the studio was, yeah, you're working, you're coming in, you're a voice actor, and you're getting paid to do a day's work, and how cool is that? You know, just getting to do it, period, is a huge fun thing. Getting paid to do character voices is one of the best things I can imagine doing. It's so much fun. There wasn't a feeling of we're doing something great here. You know, it was just kind of like, we're doing a job and we're trying to do it the best that we can. but there was no feeling that this was a big game that we were working on, that it was going to change anything. We just didn't know because it hadn't happened yet.
So in some ways, it's actually kind of nice going into it that way, just because it feels like there's maybe less pressure, and
Absolutely.
just kind of like you're there to just kind of do your thing, and then if it hits, it hits. And sure enough, it definitely took off. And
yeah,
I think that makes it all the more rewarding, the fact that you guys had that kind of environment, it sounds like, in there.
Absolutely. And it's like asking, I'm not comparing Resident Evil Remake to a Beatles song, but if you ask the Beatles how they felt about recording their first song, they would be like, yeah, it was fun, we had a good time, but we had no idea that it was going to become this thing.
Right. So the next question we actually have is from a fan that goes by the Nerdy Therapist 2996, and his question was, did the game scare you as you played it, or did all the voice work spoil all the scares?
Nope, it scared me quite a bit. And the scene that scared me the most and made me realize that I was getting into something new was the scene pretty close to the beginning of the game, where you're walking down that big long white hallway and the dogs jump through the. Oh my gosh! I had to change my pants several times. That was a moment. Trying to keep this as PG as possible. But holy crap! That moment scared the crap. And there's so many wonderful jump scares in all the Resident Evil games, but this one particularly, because it feels so old school and raw. But like you reach into the bathtub to pull the drain plug out, and the zombie said, I love stuff like that. I love jump scares. I love that whenever I watch a scary movie, I love to be I love those sudden things like that. And there's just something about it. There's an adrenaline about being scared that is so fun. As long as you're not actually in danger.
Yeah, unless you're playing in VR, at which point
you can enjoy that kind of fear without actually fearing for your life. The first game was very effective in terms of creating a sense of foreboding in the mansion. Certainly any place you walk around in there, you can almost smell the carpet. You can almost smell the old dusty atmosphere in the mansion, and it's wonderful. I love that. It's one of the things I love about Disneyland. If you go into like the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, there's a certain smell.
It's like a musty
it just
smell.
Brings me into that whole love it.
That's awesome. That was a great question that he had. Even though you did all the voice work, that it didn't spoil the scares. It's funny, the scene with the dogs jumping through the window, for example, that is iconic. I feel like that's the first scene that anyone who played Resident Evil, and I'm talking about even the original, that was the moment that separated the player with just realizing this is not like anything I've ever played. I have to be on my toes every room I go into moving forward. Right,
exactly. Yeah, that's the essence of it. This game is going to keep me on my toes.
Yes.
And so you've got that little bit of that thrill of potential fear happening all the time you're playing. You don't know what's going to happen, and it really sets that up so well.
Yes, it really does. And again, 22 years later, it still very much continues to pull that off.
Yeah.
The Popcornator said, ask him if it was Chris's blood.
Of course it was Chris's blood. That's my standard answer to that. One of the things I'm thinking about selling is the little vials of Chris's blood. Just
there you go.
Take those and just put a label on them.
Another question we have is from Ahmed Fahad 6163, and he asks, can you ask him this question, please? Were voice actors involved in writing scripts for the Resident Evil remake?
No.
Okay, so you guys had no say on like maybe altering a line or anything like that. Just this is a script, read it.
I don't remember. It was a long time ago, and I don't remember specifically if anybody changed any lines on the fly. It's always possible. But I think highly unlikely that anything changed in that. They were pretty tight with how they had things set up and how the recording sessions went. So
okay,
yeah.
Next person, Gerard Oexper. Sorry if I said your name wrong. I apologize. I'll have it down at the bottom there. Kudos, man. Here is my question: how did it feel recording the lines for the different ending routes? Did you find the outcomes interesting from one another?
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, and it made me very anxious to see how they panned out graphically. You know, to see what the animation was, and just knowing that there were different ending possibilities always made it kind of exciting to get to those points. And you know, like any project, as an actor, you do these things, and you spend some time with the characters, and you get under their skin, and you kind of develop a relationship with it, and then the project's over, and you kind of have to throw out these babies that you've created throughout this process. There's still an entanglement with any character that you've done, and I definitely feel that very closely with Chris. I feel with my character in my game, I feel that character is a certain kind of guy, that there is a certain morality involved with him, that he sees the world a certain way. My concept of who my Chris was that he's much more of a real average guy than your average superhero-ish video game character. And he's certainly just an average person. There's nothing special about him. I mean, he's got the average bravery of the average cop kind of guy. I think there's got to be a little bit of crazy in you to even sign up for something like Stars, and to go into that mansion in the first place, and to accept a job like I'm going after. You know, and here's the thing. They didn't know that they were going after zombies.
Right.
You know, he says it turned into a nightmare. Yes. We got there, and we had no idea what we were up against. You know, we were being chased by these dogs. They looked like they were already dead. Wrap your brains around that. And then, you know, Wesker says, make for that, or Chris says, make for that mansion. They get in there. They had this, to them, running into the mansion, that's just the beginning of a normal investigation. We're safe from the mad dogs, but they don't know what's about to happen. And, you know, hopefully neither does the player. I mean, that's the best of all situations. I really envy people who haven't played the game. You're so lucky that you get to go through this for the first time. You don't know what's ahead of you. It's really going to be a satisfying, funny, scary experience. And so I'm always envious of people who haven't actually played the game. I tell them, oh boy, you know, embrace this, because you're really in for something cool.
Joe, one last question we have from the community is from Mark Hickman 5988, and he says, very cool. I'd like to know how he first became involved with the remake, which that you did answer, but more recently narrating for the RE fan film The Keeper's Diary.
Yes. Okay, so
go ahead, because I just got to watch this actually the other day. So
isn't it great?
It really is.
It's such a great job. Now, my relationship with them comes from the relationship of the ROE guys, the Residents of Evil guys, with Crimson Head Elder podcast. We've done some events back and forth together where we've done some fun sort of trivia games with them, where to see, you know, which team could answer more Resident Evil style questions and things like that. So we're friends with those guys, and I found out that they were doing The Keeper's Diary, and I asked if I could be a part of it in some way. I just wanted to be an Easter egg. I didn't want a main part. I didn't want to do the Keeper. I didn't want to, you know, take the thing over. I just thought it would be fun if the voice of Chris Redfield had some small part, even if it was just a background voice or the voice of a computer, you know, something like that, where you could just say, oh, that's by the way, that's Joe Whyte.
Right.
And Andrew came up with this idea of having Charlie Kraslovsky, who did the video the video part for the first game, having him play the Keeper, but having me dub the voice, because in the first game, Charlie didn't do the voice of Chris. Correct. He just did the live action stuff, and Ramsey Scott McCullough did the voice. So it's kind of an homage to the fact that in the original game, Charlie just did the on-camera stuff, and that there was another voice. So we kind of did the same thing in The Keeper's Diary. And I just wanted it to be an Easter egg. I just wanted to have it be something kind of neat to see two Chris Redfields in one movie. I may have a small part in Andrew's upcoming fan film. I might.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly what it will be yet, but hopefully he's going to use me again. And fully amazed at what Andrew was able to pull off. They crowdfunded the thing. They did so much with a very small budget, up to and including the great CGI that they were able to pull off of the Hunter. Just really phenomenal for a small ragtag team of filmmakers to get together and pull this off. It is phenomenal. I wouldn't be surprised if they got a lot more funding for the next one.
You can tell it was made by somebody who clearly loves the game.
Clearly
loves. It's made by,
absolutely,
for the fans, by the fans.
Yes, and the respect paid to the franchise and especially the original game in that film, just phenomenal. I'm honored to be a part of it.
And it's funny, that specific file that you read in the game ended up becoming one of the most remembered and iconic files in the series, funny enough. Yeah. So to see that they actually took that and made a fan film out of that.
Isn't that amazing?
It really is. I'm watching, like, this is really awesome. Like, this is really well made.
I would like to point out that if you hear Keeper's Diary with Charlie's voice, without my voice dubbed in over it, it's perfectly fine. Charlie's a good actor. There's no technical reason to replace his voice with mine, because he was totally fine as the character.
Right.
He's one of the nicest guys on the planet. I mean, I have yet to meet him in person, but we're friends on Facebook and we chat occasionally. I'm trying to get him hooked up to go out with the rest of us for a Resident Evil convention team.
Oh, cool.
It'd be lovely to have him come out with us to do autographs and panels and talk about his experience, because Charlie's story is phenomenal about his time in Japan and all the stuff that he did there and being a part of this game and how crazy it was. I mean, they really they brought him out in a field at night and basically said, okay, now you're running over there. Now you're shooting a dog. Now there's a thing. Now it's like there was just this crazy thing that they did,
And again, he became part of something that's when it really kicked off. Little did he realize, I'm sure, that how big this franchise was going to become, starting from that point.
Right.
Joe, I can't thank you enough for taking the time again to join in for this. I have to thank RetroWolf88 for making this happen as well. Now, is there anything you would like to add to wrap up to the interview?
Just really that I'm excited for the continuation of this franchise, to see where it takes us. I don't know that I'll ever be and have the chance to be involved as a voiceover person again for it, or that I'll ever, have anything else to do with the games technically. But I'm certainly honored to be a part of the legacy of this game and this franchise. And will continue to do everything I can to support all of the voice actors who've been a part of this, and the filmmakers and the animators and the modelers who've created these great environments. I'm just honored to be a part of it in whatever small way I can. The community will continue to grow and get tighter, because now we're really getting through all of these wonderful podcasts that are out there. We're getting to know each other and sharing our love of the games. I just look forward to the future of the franchise. I look forward to playing the new game when it comes out. I'm hardcore into The Last of Us. Both of those games are, I think, my favorite video games of all time. And I'm looking forward to see how the technical progress of the previous games evolves into what we're going to be experiencing as game players in the future. It's an exciting time. It's a very exciting time with the realism that we're getting with these graphics engines. I think the possibilities of what we're all working on now are just unlimited. The only limitations that we can expect are how fast the machines can process data. Other than that, our imaginations can take us anywhere that we want to go in any of these game worlds. And to me, there's nothing more exciting. I am extremely humbled and proud and thankful that you had me on today to talk about all this. And this is not an ending to anything. This is all just going to keep going forward and getting bigger and more fun, and glad to be a small part of it.
Well, Joe, like I said, thank you again. I hope this is definitely not the last time you join in.
We definitely won't be. We will definitely do this again.
And then for everybody checking this out, again, be sure to also check out Joe and pretty much a lot of the cast from other Resident Evil games on the Crimson Head podcast, right? Crimson Head Elder podcast.
If you just go to crimson-head.com, you'll see all of our links and all of our socials and all of our previous interviews. We've interviewed some really interesting people, and we have some really interesting interviews coming up. So come on over and join us and give a listen. Okay.
All right, Joe. Well, thank you again. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed. Take care.
Pleasure's all mine. Take care. See you soon.
You got it.